Thank you so much, Zaraish, for joining us today. And today, for all the viewers who are watching this video, we at bGREEN are going to talk to Zaraish, who is a fitness expert, a certified nutritionist, as well as a trainer who also experiments with a lot of different fitness ideas on himself. And he has had a tremendous transformation at a personal level too. Welcome to the conversation today, Zaraish. Good to have you.
Likewise. Really, I'm really glad to be here with you. And let's hope we can put out as much as quality information as we can to the public, and that's what that's what we love doing.
So Zaraish, the reason why we wanted to have a conversation with you is because we are dealing with in a category called as plant-based. There are a lot of questions, a lot of myths, a lot of misinformation which floats around, and people have n number of questions around it. So allow me to start with the first very common question which people ask when they are talking about plant-based is that when it comes to things like plant-based proteins, people are usual consumers of whey-based proteins or any animal-based source, right? So can you help us understand that when you compare a whey protein versus a plant-based protein, is there a difference in strength? Can it actually work for people? What are your thoughts on that?
So see, the main difference, it just comes down to that it's processed differently. But when you talk about the essential amino acids, basically amino acids, for those who do not know, it's just like amino acids are the building blocks of protein. So that's what, you imagine a wall, there are lots of bricks in there, right? So it's just the same with protein. There's a lot of bricks, and they have different names: essential amino acids, non-essential. So there's methionine, tryptophan, valine, isoleucine, leucine, etc. Let's not bore the public with the scientific terms, but then it's just that the amino acids are different, and the placing of the amino acids and the quantity of amino acids are different in when you talk about whey protein and plant, animal proteins and plant proteins. First, let's hear that. But when you talk about plant protein powder, it's been combined in a way that all the amino acids are fulfilled, and it's like the profile is what we call amino acid profile, right? So that's fulfilled.
Right.
So it's pretty much that it's a myth that you cannot use plant protein and whey proteins are superior. It's just like that, right? But one thing I would say, one big difference would be the taste. Obviously, pea proteins can be a little not unpleasing kind of taste, but I think bGREEN's done a good job with that though.
Okay. So one common question which I also have interacted with some of my friends is that the perception that plant proteins do not provide the complete BCAA profile, or even certain amino acids are lacking. This is one of the reasons for the fitness community to not try out plant proteins. So for example, pea protein alone cannot give you the entire amino acid profile in some. So we combine certain plant-based sources. So what are your thoughts on that? So does combining different plant proteins help, and thereby making it at par with whey proteins?
Absolutely. So most of the plant protein powders that are in the market right now, and not just talking about powders, let's just come to the plant protein in general. If you combine let's say legumes like beans, chickpeas, rajma, dal, etc., if you combine it with, let's say, brown rice or quinoa or millets, the most of the amino acid profile is going to be fulfilled. So let's say methionine is probably is the major amino acid which is missing in lysine, in dal, rajma, chickpeas, and the beans, peas. So you get that methionine from rice. So it's getting the methionine which was missing in dal, and you're getting it from brown rice. And there are certain amino acids missing or in less quantities in rice. Let's say lysine, as I was talking about that, right? So lysine is a particular essential amino acid which is in less quantity in rice. So you're getting that from the dal. So it's यहाँ से जो नहीं है वो यहाँ से आ गया, यहाँ से जो नहीं है वो यहाँ से आ गया, and then both are complementing each other, and that's how the combining of the plant proteins works, and it works absolutely fine. But it's just a conscious and mindful task that you need to be aware about, because some people are not totally aware about this, right? And that you have to combine the particular sources to complete the amino acid profile. That's one thing.
Right. Also, for the knowledge of our audience, we want to get your thoughts around the PDCA-SS score, which is again one common thing which you see around social media. People say that, hey, PDCA-SS score is less for plant proteins in comparison to whey protein. What are your thoughts on that, and how much does it actually affect bodybuilders, or let's say even somebody who is in a fitness zone, for instance?
Right. Like talking about PDCAs, it's not as reliable as a marker as the bioavailability of protein. Like, okay. So I don't think it's going to make a big difference. And literally, there's been tons of evidence which proves that you can have just plant protein, and like when you compare it with animal protein, a little bit of essential amino acids are going to be more in the animal protein, but that does not limit the muscle building in any way.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So it's just that obviously it's going to be hard. It's never, like, nobody's going to deny that it's hard getting all the amino acids from plant protein, but it's never impossible. Right.
Oh.
And like the PDCA score should not be taken too seriously, because some researchers have actually shown that it's not as reliable of a marker as just the bioavailability of protein would be. So it's completely fine to just go eat just plant proteins for your overall requirements.
Right. Also, for our knowledge, can you help us understand more about bioavailability and how one should understand it for their daily?
Okay, yeah. So see, different kinds of proteins have different kinds of bioavailabilities. Okay, so talk about, let's say if you talk about like sprouts and legumes, the bioavailability is not like 100%. There's like, it's a score of 100.
Yeah.
And let's say if you take whey protein, then the score is somewhere around 90. So like whenever you consume any protein, okay, let's just forget about the plant or whey or anything. Okay.
Yeah.
If you consume any sort of protein, your body is never going to absorb 100% of it. Okay.
Yes.
So there's always a certain percentage which is going to be like undigested, and it just doesn't absorb. It's not undigested. Let's not use that term. Undigested would be like causing digestive issues. No, it doesn't happen. Okay. It's just that it's not 100% absorbed. Now, if you're consuming 10 grams of protein from anywhere, your body is going to use only 8 or 9 of it, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's basically the bioavailability. Now let's say whey protein has a bioavailability of 90, somewhere around 90 plus. Okay. So 90% of what you're going to use from whey protein is going to be like absorbed well. And that's mostly because of the amino acids only, because like if you logically see, even chicken has like a full somewhere around 80-85 of the bioavailability, and even other types of meat. Okay, and like if you see the plant proteins, the bioavailability goes down to 60s or 70s, and the main reason is just that the amino acids are missing, or in less quantities rather than missing. I wouldn't say missing, but it's in slightly lesser quantities as desired. So when you again coming back to the same question as we like started with, the combining really solves the problem here. So taking like 2 sources of plant proteins and then combining it, the bioavailability also increases because the amino acid profile increases.
Right.
So that should be 100% fine.
Perfect. So this brings me back to some important myths. Like you mentioned that it's not impossible to get the entire amino acid profile from plant-based foods or sources of protein powders for that matter. If let's say we compare 100 gram chicken versus 100 grams of, like you say, kidney beans, right? Standard plant-based versus animal-based sources. So we both of them have two similar amounts of protein, but there are differences in other profiles. Can you help us with that? That let's say shifts that what happens?
Right. Yeah. Perfect. So like 100 grams of, let's say, rajma, as you brought that into the topic, right? Now 100 grams of, let's say, boneless chicken is going to give you somewhere around 20 to 23 grams of protein. Some people would like to say 25. Okay, that's not the case. It's somewhere around 20 to 23 grams of protein per 100 grams of boneless chicken. Obviously, with bones, the real protein content changes. Okay, so taking the boneless chicken, that's that. And if you take 100 grams of rajma, as in the kidney beans, which are raw. Now, eating 100 grams of raw rajma and eating 100 grams of cooked rajma have 2 completely different protein and other macro profiles. Okay, so that really changes. So if you're talking about 100 grams of boiled like rajma, kidney beans, then I guess you'll get somewhere around 8 to 12 grams of protein Okay.
Yeah.
Because nobody's eating raw, right? And when you cook it, obviously the water intake is it soaks the water and it enlarges, right? So the weight increases.
Yeah.
So the major difference is that the cooking profile, the cooking changes the nutrient profile of any beans, not just like rajma, right? You talk about chickpeas and dals and everything. That's the similar issue. Okay. So that's one thing, and the other thing was again the amino acids. So amino acids are slightly in lesser quantities, like talking mostly about the methionine and tryptophan. These are the main amino acids, the essentials, which are missing in lesser quantities in the chickpeas and kidney beans, etc.
Right.
So that's that. So that's the major kind of difference, and that's that.
So one of the other differences which I also noticed, Zaraish, is that the saturated fat content, the cholesterol, the fiber content, if we take 100 grams of cooked rajma versus 100 grams of cooked boneless chicken, would be completely different. My understanding, being a vegan myself, is that the saturated fat content in chicken as well as the cholesterol and the fiber is not there. It's on the higher side. Whereas in case of plant-based foods, that's not the case. So I think that brings in slight
absolutely. Now, like again, there's a few caveats here for the saturated fat and cholesterol. Okay, number one, like I want to clear this out, like because a lot of people don't know what saturated fat is, and it's just been deemed as bad. But again, there's a few caveats here. So let's just come to that first. Number one, there are different types of fat that you get from food. So there's mostly saturated fat that comes from animal sources. There's polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats, which you get from the plant-based sources, right? So there's been a big controversy when you talk about saturated fat and heart disease and everything. It's been a crazy debate going on from decades, and it's never been we've never come to a solid conclusion. But recently, there's been sort of a breakthrough that it really comes down to your caloric intake. That's number one. If you're eating too many calories from saturated fat, then definitely it's going to be as bad as eating too many calories from polyunsaturated fat as well. Okay, or the same case with too many calories from carbs. So that's how the whole keto thing came into play, right? Too many calories from carbs. Then people started blaming carbs and talking about carbs as evil. So that's not the case. If you limit your caloric intake, if you're mindful about your portions, if you're mindful about your other, there should be a balance. And I'm not saying just when you talk about the vegan or non-vegan diets, it's just nutrition in general should be balanced, and combining sources is always a good thing. Not going this is what I always tell people, do what you can sustain over a period of time, right? That's one thing. So that's that. The second thing is that boneless chicken, if you talk about the boneless chicken, then the cholesterol content is almost zero there. The saturated fat is zero there. And it's the fatty kind of chicken that contains a little bit of higher cholesterol. Not just chicken, I'm talking more about the other meats. The red meat can have a little bit more saturated fat and cholesterol. So that can be a problem in excess, obviously. So when you come to that, then definitely there can be an advantage of plant proteins over the fatty meats. Okay, but again, it really comes down to your overall caloric intake as well. That should be a big factor, that needs to be considered when you talk about heart health and cholesterol and saturated fat and everything, right?
Right. So that's what the research is. My research has also, when I was doing my own personal research, I also came across that multiple part that people who are extremely heavy on the non-vegetarian diet, like let's say the red meat consumption is on the very high side. There are multiple researches which correlate that the higher is the red meat consumption or certain types of other seafoods too, there is a increase in the chances of you suffering from a heart disease or higher blood pressure.
Right. Yeah.
These points.
Okay, let me just correct you in the statement there. Seafood is actually linked with better heart health.
Okay.
So because of the omega-3 content, when you talk about seafood in particular, so that's a very different kind of very different category. So I hope you've heard about the Mediterranean diet.
Yes, of course.
So Mediterranean diet is pretty much the healthiest kind of eating pattern that one can follow. It's because of the high seafood content, prawns, fish, etc., which can offer a lot of omega-3 and the entire so for the protein, what the Mediterranean diet it's essentially that for the protein you rely a little bit somewhat on the seafood, and for your nutrients you rely heavily on fruits and veggies. So it's like a very heart healthy and very overall everything healthy kind of eating style, and that can be very helpful when you talk about the heart health. So that's a very different thing. But red meat, again coming back to the same thing, that can be a problem because of the high calorie intake, because fat is the highest calorie, it's got the highest calorie density. Coming back to the basics, protein, carbs and fats, these are the three main macronutrients that you get from food, right? Protein has 4 calories per gram. Carbs have 4 calories per gram, but fats have 9 calories per gram. So it is very easy to overeat fat. And trust me, even in the typical Indian diets, if you see food being cooked in the typical Indian household or in Indian restaurants, you'll see tons of oil being used for a portion, and that can be very unhealthy as well, right? So even the use of plant-based oils or else the unsaturated fats, the polyunsaturated fats, excess use of that can still be unhealthy. Yes, meat can be higher on the calorie side, and that can be a disadvantage, but you can literally go berserk on a plant-based diet or just a normal diet, meatless diet, and still see complications due to the excess calorie content from your fat.
Interesting.
I'm sure you've seen Indian households eating fried foods and everything, adding tons of oil. Everything, right?
So that's pretty common. So this brings me to point up which I wanted to cover, that some of the myths which are prevalent in the plant-based food world is that if you shift to, let's say, 100% plant-based food tomorrow, you will end up lacking yourself in micronutrients, or all the vitamins, all the minerals, zinc. How do you fulfill those? So how true is that in your opinion?
So I would say if you're misinformed or if you're not fully mindful about your eating style, then yes, going fully plant-based without proper education can be detrimental. Going back to the same keto thing, as I was saying, right? Keto is in the trend, so these keto has been in the trend for a couple of years now, and so if you talk about that, even that can be detrimental, even when it's rich in animal protein. So animal proteins like eggs and liver and organ meat has been known to be the richest when you talk about micronutrients, but it can still cause the keto diets and meat, carnivore diets, if you talk about that can still cause a lot of micronutrient deficiencies. Right? So it's not a particular eating style, it's the misinformed kind of eating that can cause the micronutrient deficiencies. That's one thing that I would like to clear, right? So it's not that you go plant-based and you'll be lacking of some vitamins and minerals. It's the eating. You need to be mindful about your eating style. Okay. So that's that. And suppose if you as you talked about zinc, right? So plenty of sources that you can get zinc from. Number one, obviously you can rely on a supplement for zinc, and because even the non-vegetarians who are eating chicken will not get the required amount of zinc. So that's a very important thing to note. So only whole eggs and seafood give you good amount of zinc, and there's some sources of plant-based as well. Something like nuts. Nuts are very rich in zinc. So including nuts, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, flax seeds, these can also provide a good amount of zinc in your diet. So that's that. But if you still somewhere, if you feel or if you get yourself checked and if you see a zinc deficiency, then you could definitely go for a supplement as well. So supplements are not bad, right? It's just that people need to come to an understanding that if you have a requirement for it, you need to take it. It's better than ending up in the hospital for some big issue, right? So
this is the crux. I think it's an important point which you have mentioned, that if tomorrow somebody decides to be plant-based, you cannot just eat one particular type of plant the entire time and expect the complete micronutrients be there. It has to be structured. You need to have all the things.
I'll just bring up some story I just had in mind. Okay, so I had a friend. She told me, I was in Pune at that time, and she told me that she was going vegan, and she was vegan for a few months at that time. and I looked at her diet and I was like, I was actually expecting like whole foods combining and everything. I thought she was informed about everything, and she was, what she was eating? She was eating French fries. And that so, and French fries is plant-based. You're using plant-based oil, and you're using like potatoes, right? So nothing wrong about French fries. I'm not like demeaning people who eat French fries. I love French fries here. Not gonna lie about it. But like, you can't expect it to fulfill your nutritional requirements, right? Absolutely. She was just eating khakra, French fries, and so nothing wrong about these kind of foods, but you can't rely heavily on these foods to give you the nutrients, right? You need to specifically, if you're going a certain kind of eating, then you need to be more mindful about your micronutrients, your protein intake. You can't just work with just the regular Indian snacks that you get, right?
Right. So in that case, I wanted to understand that what would be your recommendation in terms of the top plant-based foods which people can consume from tomorrow if they wanted to fulfill their protein requirements. What would be your thoughts around that?
Right. Okay. So awesome. Sabse pehle to like soya chunks or tofu. The highest protein, like it's got the highest protein content in terms of the calories as well, because there's a lot of if you see a lot of plant-based protein sources, let's say chickpeas. Okay, chickpeas have a lot of protein, but it also comes with a lot of carb calories. So the people trying to increase carbs, increase protein, will also have to increase a little bit from carbs. So if you see from that perspective, soya chunks and tofu can be more in terms of the calories from protein rather than the calories from carbs. So that's like when you talk about lean protein sources, right? So that can be one of the lean protein sources. That's that. Second, obviously, like if you see from that perspective, then number one would be obviously getting a plant protein powder because of the acid profile and the overall content as well, because you get like almost 80 to 90% of the calories from protein if you see a plant protein powder, and very less, like hardly 3 to 4 grams of carbs per scoop and hardly 1 or 2 grams of fat per scoop. So that's a big win there. But soya chunks, tofu, plant protein powders, chickpeas, again, it's a great source of protein. It's just that people need to be mindful that it also comes with carbs. So the overall placing of the calories should be in that way, right? You can't just eat a lot of chickpeas and then eat a lot of rice and still like expect fat loss, right? You need to be mindful about your overall calories if you're looking for fat loss. But for muscle building purposes, it's absolutely fine. You can consume chickpeas, sprouts, really great sources. So even pumpkin seeds, if you talk about pumpkin seeds, they come with almost all the amino acids are in good quantities, even the essential amino acids. But still a little bit of the methionine and tryptophan will still be missing. I mean, in lesser quantities, again, let's not use the term missing, but it's still better when you compare it with other legumes and beans. So pumpkin seeds is a great snack option if you specifically on a plant-based.
Okay, and there are two very big myths which we observe in media, people talking about it, that if you shift to plant-based protein, if you don't consume milk, how are you going to get your calcium, right? because milk in India is consumed and equated to being calcium-rich food. If somebody removes dairy from their diet component, they are going to get calcium deficiency. What are your thoughts around that?
So that's a big myth, I would say. You get calcium from so many sources. Like I can't list a lot of sources, because there's literally so many sources. Number one, if you really like talking milk to milk, if you switch from normal milk to plant-based milk like soya milk, it gives you the amount of calcium that you need. Okay, it gives you almost similar amount of calcium that you would get from normal milk. So in fact, soya milk, if you see the unsweetened soya milk, it can be lower in calories than regular milk and giving you the same amount of protein. But the little bit of amino acid can still be like the problem. But then if you're combining, like let's say if you're making like a soya milk smoothie, adding some nuts and adding some like fruit, and you get you combine sources, and again the protein, so like the amino acid will be fulfilled. That's that. So you can literally just shift from regular milk to normal milk, regular milk to plant-based milk, and still get the amount of calcium that you need. So soya milk, oat milk, these still contain a lot of calcium. So you don't have to worry about the calcium intake. And trust me, even the people who drink milk, they're not drinking a lot of milk, right? So who do you think people are drinking like 1 liter of milk a day just to get the calcium? There's nobody like that. So it's just a big myth. Like switching to plant-based milk is definitely like just fine.
And let's say if I am
beneficial, I would say,
if I'm completely allergic to the idea of consuming any form of milk, can I still get enough calcium through my plant-based foods? Is that possible?
Yeah, so even chickpeas, legumes, beans, they still offer a lot of calcium. Nuts, oil seeds, as I told, pumpkin seeds, flax seeds, they still offer some amount of calcium. So you're going to get the calcium from there as well. So there's no need to worry about the calcium content.
Okay. So since you have clarified for us these two important myths which are quite prevalent, it brings me to another myth which is quite big in the fitness community, that you cannot build muscles on a plant-based diet. What are your thoughts around that? Is it doable, not doable? What do you have to say?
So again, so it's a commonly believed theory that if plants say you're not going to get the amino acids, right? But as I told, yes, if you are not mindful about it, then it can be a problem. But being mindful, making mindful choices, doing the combining, and getting your overall protein, hitting the right amount of protein that your body needs. Basically, let's say if you're a lean individual, then let's take my example. If I'm like 70 kilos, then about 1.5 grams per kg of body weight of protein I should be getting in a day to build muscle. Okay.
Right.
Some people say 2 grams per kg. That's highly debated, but 1.6 is like the perfect sweet spot, where most researchers have also proven that 1.6 grams of protein per kg of body weight is what you need to build muscle. Okay.
Right.
A little bit more can be fine, especially it offers like protein offers you satiety, so that's one thing that you can increase, but 1.6 is what you need. So you can definitely get it from plant proteins. That's never going to be a problem. And so if you're using if you're mindful about it, then it's never going to be a problem for muscle building. And even the researchers, when you see animal protein versus plant protein, if you see the research, because there's a lot of researches, right? If you see there's tons of research out there, but the highly reliable researchers are the systematic reviews and the meta-analysis. Okay, these are the kinds of researches that we as nutritionists and the researchers in the field actually look out for. These kind of researches that are systematic reviews and meta-analysis. So these offer the highest amount of reliability. Okay, and there's less bias there. So even there's been a big research which shows that animal protein and plant proteins can equally be effective at building muscle. Definitely, people consuming animal protein can build a little bit more muscle because it's easier. And people who are consuming plant proteins are not very mindful about the amino acid profiles. And that can be a big factor why plant proteins can be a little bit lacking in terms of the muscle building properties. Right. So even in the research, it shows that it is good. You can build muscle just fine, but the user factor, as in the user negligence of being not mindful about the protein and amino acid profile, can be an issue. So if you're mindful, if you're getting your protein right, if you're getting the amino acids right, then nothing's going to stop you. You can build muscle just fine.
Because I've also personally come across a lot of celebrities who are quite well known on international platforms, who are heavily plant-based, and like you rightly mentioned, it's more important to diversify your food choices in a plant-based diet and ensuring that you are combining right types of food together rather than just sticking to one source and expecting muscles to grow overnight, right? Okay.
And you also you also need carbs if you want to build muscle. If you also need carbs, you also need healthy fats. So you can't just be on just consume only protein and build muscle, right? You need all nutrients as well. So that's again a big misunderstanding when you talk about protein and muscle building.
Okay, so I also would want to understand, Zaraish, from your side, that what are the key let's say hero benefits or the top 5 benefits of a plant-based diet that can help somebody? Because I've also read some recommendations from doctors, even during the current COVID times, which I'm observing, that once doctors are saying that, hey, you need to consume more fresh fruits, more vegetables, and more plant-based foods, which can help you to recover during these time. But none of them have actually recommended an animal-based food. So, is there some truth to that? That it helps better to recover faster? It's more beneficial.
See, I'll the main problem that can be like I don't know, like a lot of doctors give a lot of different kinds of advice, so I wouldn't say like every doctor would be like ideal to take nutrition advice from, okay, because like specializations exist in the world, so
right.
You can't go to a gynecologist for your heart surgery. It's just pathetic, right? You can't just do that. So you need to go to a person who's like specialized in nutrition for your nutrition advice. As general guidelines, people have told that like most people have avoided giving that you need to eat like animal sources of protein, because like animal sources of protein, people associate that with junk food a lot. So that can be a factor. Again, a caveat that I can point out. So like I'll be very honest. I'm like the guy who's in the middle. Okay, I don't go all extreme towards the carnivore. I don't go extreme towards the vegan diets. But I'm like a friend for both, because I'm a friend for the general public, and I'm giving you like the real, the real truth about both sides, so you can choose your pick. Okay, but like when you talk about the plant-based foods, people generally associate that more with like fruits, veggies. So that's basically, you avoid eating junk if you talk about like prioritizing plant foods and not eating more animal foods. So people associate, like, trust me, like I've got so many friends who associate animal foods with like KFC chicken. So again, that's a big flaw in the thinking of the society as a whole, and that's why like giving a recommendation as eat more chicken, that can be misleading to a huge like vast factor, right? So that's one thing. So maybe that's one big thing, but overall, see, again, it's just like nutrition is highly personalized, so you need to consult a professional nutritionist or a professional dietitian if you want to get your personalized nutrition guidance. But overall, it doesn't matter where you're getting the protein much from. Okay, get your protein because that's what's going to build the immunoglobulins, which are the antibodies. Okay, like for your immunity. So protein is really important for immunity, and people really neglect that. So just if you want to focus on immunity and recovery, then protein is a big factor, big thing that can contribute to your immune health. So get it from whatever source, just get it right. that's more important.
Yeah, because in Indian dietary patterns, the protein as a macro is heavily missing. We are very heavy on the
absolutely.
And the right knowledge about eating protein is missing countrywide. Even when I ask my parents to consume more protein through some other sources, they laugh at me. There's that we have enough protein. We don't want to get enough protein. There's so many I would say bad information floating around.
Yeah, absolutely. Awareness needs to be there out there. Like, trust me, like I was just recently reading a survey, and it showed that more than 73% of Indians are deficient in protein.
Yes.
And if you compare all the Asian countries, Indians have the least protein content per day from their diet.
Wow.
So that is really sad to see, and like there needs to be more awareness about protein, and people need to be more mindful about the protein intake from the diet. So that's something that needs to be considered.
Okay, so Z, this brings us to the last part of our conversation. You tried certain products from bGREEN, and like you mentioned that pea proteins aren't that friendly when it comes to taste. We tried experimenting with a lot of variations. We keep on performing a lot of iterations in the taste profile, because internally also we felt that was the case when we started off. But what are your thoughts on the current formulation? Which one is your favorite flavor?
So I've tried the chocolate and strawberry so far. And trust me, the chocolate is really nice. I loved it. It's like, I just have it here. I was just like gonna consume it right now. So this chocolate flavor, I think the best part about it is that it's not as sweet.
Yeah.
So because a lot of people I've tried a few brands. I'm not gonna nitpick on any particular plant protein brands because I don't want to be that guy. Okay. But then I've tried the leading brands in India. Okay, trust me. And when I tasted their plant proteins, and I'm like, oh, No. Like I couldn't get through the second sip. It's that bad. But why I can say that bGREEN can be it has the slightly better edge over other plant proteins specifically is that it's not as sweet. So people try to make proteins very sweet.
Yeah.
It should not be as sweet. So the sweetness is just about right, I would say. So especially if you're making like smoothies with bananas or fruits, so the fruit also adds up to the sweetness. So you don't want to make it too sweet, right?
So did you find any weird smell of pea or any smoothness issue, something like that? What are your thoughts around that?
No, I haven't had any problem. So even if you see here, like I don't know if you can see it on the camera. The texture is just like fine. I don't know if that works here, but the texture I liked it. It's just fine. It's just like you're having a whey protein shake with water. The texture is just very smooth, and I don't find the powdery taste as usually the plant proteins do have a lot of powdery taste in your mouth. So that's not the issue here. So good thing. Like definitely you've done your research on this.
Super. Thank you so much for that. One last parting point. That if let's say tomorrow somebody wants to switch to a plant-based diet, what would be your 3 or 4 pointers to those folks for our general audience sake? Where should they start?
Okay, starting, it's very simple. Try to get your protein from yes, let's say if you're having the 3 big meals. Okay, number 1 you can get like soya chunks or tofu. The other 2 meals you can just rely on chickpeas, rajma, dal, etc., whatever source you like, right? And get some quinoa or brown rice or something like that for your side. Eat lots of fruits and vegetables. That's really good. Gonna give you a lot of nutrients that your body needs. Okay, so that's a really good thing. So that's that. And don't once you get into the habit of that, and then slowly even if you're working out, then you need a little bit more protein, right? So you can throw in a plant protein powder, have it with water, have it with soya milk, make it a smoothie or something, make it interesting. There's a lot of things that you can do, right? So and for snacking you can just have some nuts, pumpkin seeds, flax seeds. So a couple of whole foods that you can consume on a plant-based diet and still get a lot of nutrients. So all
right. Okay, so that concludes our discussion with you, Z, today. Thank you so much for your time, and I think we have received some really interesting scientific pointers, which I think is really essential in this community, because my personal aim to have such conversations is to bring those honest conversations and honest information. That's really important. So thank you for your time. It was lovely talking to you.
Welcome. Likewise. I'm glad we could put out some quality content for the viewers, because there needs to be a lot of awareness, especially when you talk about the plant proteins. There are a lot of myths. There's a lot of misconceptions about protein. So I hope we've done a big contribution to the industry.
Great. Thank you so much, Z.
You're most welcome. Thank you.